Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Excuse me. Very excited to have my next guest on the show, Ben Walker. He's the CEO and founder of Ditto Transcripts. Welcome, Ben. Thanks for being on the show, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Patrick.
Now, what exactly, I know what you do. I know what your company does, that you work with first responder agencies all around the country. What is Ditto Transcripts? Can you explain that for the listener?
Sure. We get audio and video from agencies all over the country, like you said, and then we type it out and put it into a Word doc, sometimes a PDF, and normally they're certified for court use or to pass along to the DA to keep the cases moving.
Which is much
Oftentimes,
needed. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, yes, depending on who you ask. Obviously, I'm biased, but the detectives and investigators that we work with would prefer to be out in the field instead of at their computer typing.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. What got you started in this business, Ben? I mean, you seem like, I mean, I don't know you personally, but just we just met. You seem like a very entrepreneurial guy, but what's your background?
We actually started as a medical transcription company a little over 15 years ago. And due to changes in the healthcare industry, doctors now point and click, and they used to dictate. And you may have seen them do that when you were younger, where they would walk around with a digital recorder and
I saw that.
record.
Yeah.
Well, now they have iPads or laptops and they point and click, and they don't do that anymore. So while that was transitioning for us, we were also being contacted by law enforcement agencies, and they would ask us to transcribe for them, and we would always tell them no because we didn't have anyone that could transcribe, say, an interview with a witness or a suspect. And the more clients we lost, the more worried I got. And I don't have a resume. So I started to look into law enforcement transcription, and I found there was a new world out there and a new need that was growing because budgets are being slashed in law enforcement. So the back office staff isn't being replaced that used to do what we do for them now. And then we threw in the pay as you go, use us as much or as little as you want. So that was appealing to agencies because they didn't have to have a full-time person, nor did they have to commit, say, $10,000 to us every month. They could do 1,000 and then do 5,000 and then do 2,000. It didn't matter to us. So that's the long story short.
I love it. Now, this doesn't take the place of like it supplements like an RMS system, like a record management system for the agency, correct?
Yes, they normally take our transcript and put it into the record management system, either as an attachment or they'll copy paste it directly into their RMS system.
I mean, this is, I mean, I've heard, I mean, this has been around. I mean, when I was a cop, we talked a little bit before we started, we didn't have any of this technology. I wish we did. I started out with a typewriter and just handwritten reports, which was a pain in the ass. But how many agencies? I imagine you're very busy. Your company's very busy. You're all over. I mean, how many agencies are you working with? It's got to be a ton.
On a regular basis, every month, we probably invoice, I would say at least 30 that use us continually. And then we probably work with another 100 that are on and off based on their need because they might be smaller or they might have less budgeted. So trying to think of somebody down in your neck of the woods, like Bradenton PD,
Hmm.
uses us sparingly when they're allowed to, when they have a little extra money and the detective can't handle all of the interviews. So they'll send them to us, but they don't have a whole ton budgeted. Meanwhile, the Washington State Patrol keeps bumping their budget up every year because they use us so much, and then they get they like it. So
Yeah.
they keep using us and
Yeah.
tell other people within the agency about
So
us.
yeah, so word of mouth just spreads, and you got some free marketing right there. So the officer or first responder out there just do a dictation into a device or something, and then they just shoot it off to you guys, correct?
Yes. So they'll upload it on our secure web platform, either an audio or video or both. So it could be body cam, dash cam. The interview rooms that have the cameras set up, they'll download those audios and send them to us, or the video and send them to us. It's kind of whatever they want. They can also dictate, but
Yeah,
we take all kinds of audio and video from all the different agencies.
that's amazing. And as you can imagine, there was a horrible tragedy like we were talking about in Boulder, Colorado, and prayers go out to the families and the victims of that horrible incident. But in something like that, a mass casualty event, then I mean, to your point, you're going to have officers interviewing all different types of people and witnesses and all these different, and they already have enough stress, and we can talk about stress and burnout in a minute. But to have your service to as a as a option, so you can take some of this burden off the first responders and the officers is huge.
And that's what we've been told from a number of different agencies is the ability to send us, say, 10 interviews from a homicide and go home on Friday and not have to worry about it. And when they get back to work on Monday, the interviews are transcribed and ready for them. So it's off their plate and they don't have to think about it over the weekend or do any work and log overtime over the weekend.
Does your company ever run into like, obviously you're doing work for the DA's office and the prosecution. Do you ever run into like, questions from a defense attorney or saying, "Hey, are you guys doing accurate transcription?" You know what I mean? Just stuff like that.
Yes, it's usually a last ditch effort
Yeah.
when yeah, they're trying to get somebody either off on a technicality or an
Yeah.
appeal
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
go through. They'll say, "Wait a second, we want to check the transcript."
Yeah. Yeah.
And we use people in the US that have gone through Colorado Bureau of Investigation fingerprinting. So we can stand behind it and we can be called to testify if needed. It's never gotten to that point. It's been threatened maybe 10 or 12 times. It's always been thrown out. The judge eventually gets around to it and will read the transcript again, or their clerk will do it, and they'll come back and say, sorry, this is a good transcript. You don't have anything here.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's like you said, it's like some BS effort, because that's the only thing they have. Let's try to get a technicality, and but you guys are ready. Yeah, let's go,
Oh,
man.
yeah. Well, our transcriptionists and our people know how important the work is. So
Exactly.
there's no, you know, uh, they're not lazy about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they can't be because, like you said, I mean, this is, serious, very serious understatement. You're talking about people's lives, people's potential freedom, the protection of the agencies, the liability, all that stuff. And you've been doing this since 2010, brother. So it's been a long time. So you guys honed it down, right? You've
Well,
honed it down. It's flawless, for lack of a
that
better term.
that and we have transcriptionists who really like working with certain clients.
Hmm.
So, say the Colorado Springs PD and Longmont PD, they really like for some reason. We'll send the same work or the work from those agencies to the same people over and over. So they get really good at it and they get used to the voices and the names and the locations. So they can go faster. They're more familiar with it and they'll make a little bit more money because they're going faster.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you said, speaking about money. I like what your company does, Ben, it sounds like you don't lock them into any long-term commitment, that it's all based on the need of the agency and how much resources they have, correct?
Yes, some are good at predicting, like using Longmont, or I'm sorry, Loveland PD. They have a budget every year and they follow it pretty closely, and they're usually within a few $1,000s.
Hmm.
But some agencies that don't have the resources like Loveland has set aside, yeah, it's pay as you go. and they keep an eye on it. And we also confirm everything, and we'll let them know if they're approaching a certain dollar amount because they ask us in advance, hey, when we're getting close to 30,000, let us know.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of agencies out there, Ben, you probably know, are not big agencies. They're smaller agencies. Those are the agencies that comprise most law enforcement agencies in the country. Not every agency, as you know, is like an NYPD or a Denver PD. Most agencies are smaller in nature. So it's really cool that you're offering a service for those agencies that might not need it often, but if they need it, you're there. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah, exactly. Like you growing up in Denver, I'm sure you probably remember Edgewater,
Oh yeah.
um, right next to Lakewood, right next to Arvada, like in that little tiny, like we work with them and we won't hear from them for 18 months and then they'll have a major felony and we'll get 20 hours of interviews. Like,
Exactly. Well, and getting back to, let's talk about like burnout and stress. If you don't mind, I mean, when you have, again, agencies, officers out there, and I just want to, I should have prefaced by saying it's not just police officers, any first responder out there are under tremendous stress. I know I was there when I was a cop. Burnout, again, I was there. And it's good to have these services out there that can alleviate some of that stress and burnout, right?
yeah, that's what we try to do. So they don't have to think about it. Once they send it to us, they'll get an email that or a notification that says your transcripts are ready. And it'll be 3 or 6 days later. And they can take that off their plate and get that out of their, you know, over and over processing. When is this going to be due? Or, oh my God, I got to sit down for 8 hours and transcribe this myself.
Yeah.
We
That,
we take
yeah.
that off their plate for them.
And that alone is, and for the listener out there, if you're not familiar, um, most of you are the listeners. I mean, that is huge because that takes a big burden. I mean, there's still stress obviously behind the case, but to alleviate some of that stress is huge. How has technology, in your opinion, you've been doing this a long time, brother. How has technology in law enforcement evolved over the last 15 years?
When we started, our first large law enforcement agency was the Arkansas State Police, and they had dash cams, but the dash cams didn't have audio. So
I remember
it
those
took
days.
video. Yeah, it took video, but you couldn't hear anything. Um, Once in a while, they would carry handheld digital recorders to use in conjunction. It depended on the investigator. Um, Now, as you know, body cams do everything and record everything. So, I know there was a time before dash cams, but for our circumstances here at Ditto, we started with the dash cams with no audio, and most cars didn't even have dash cams. Those
Yeah,
are probably the higher ups that had dash cams, and then the guys that were on patrol. But many of them didn't have that.
yeah,
They would they would dictate later, and if they had a recording device, it was like what we were talking about earlier, the doctors, and they'd carry little digital recorders, and hopefully it didn't break, or they made sure they pressed record instead of stop.
yeah, yeah.
And now, I mean, there are cameras and microphones everywhere. We get audio and video from all kinds of different locations, not only body cams and dash cams.
Yeah, and I remember what you said about, I remember this was years ago, one of the agencies I worked for, we had dash cams, but it was only like within two patrol units. It wasn't like they were, like you said, they were, because they were big and expensive and all kinds of other stuff. But I remember those days where you would have you'd be looking at like a DUI arrest or something, or something other major, and you would have all the officers there from a dash cam. But you're right, there was no audio. So how the hell do people know what the hell you were saying? You know, because I don't remember ever. Well, maybe I did. And this was years ago. Carry, uh, some sort of recorder or something. But then in the heat of the moment, you got to remember to turn it on, and all kinds of other crap. So things have evolved for the better.
Yes, they have. In my opinion, definitely. Because now there's no he said, she said. It's right there on the audio or video or both. And it's plain as day.
Now, do you get out of curiosity, Ben, do you get like I think, can you correct me because you work with agencies all the time. I've been out of it for a while. Don't tasers have like some sort of recording device on it now, or am I thinking of something else?
We haven't gotten any from Taser.
Okay.
All ours is body worn camera.
Okay. Where do you think technology is going with law enforcement? Stick with law enforcement. And what do you foresee
Oh,
happening not only with your company, which is very successful, but just technology as a whole, in law enforcement?
I think eventually it, it, everything will be recorded. You won't be able to turn off the body worn cameras. I think they'll be on 24/7 and it will automatically upload like it does now. It'll probably upload from the field where it could be real time.
Yeah.
Because now, as you know, when the car comes back onto property is when it starts to upload.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, obviously satellites and cell phones and all that are getting better and better. So it will upload immediately, if not be live.
The only thing that I remember, when we got body cams, and maybe it's changed, but we had to, I mean, because when you're like at a hospital, for instance, and you're talking to a victim or a suspect, and they get into like medical history or something like that, which is protected under HIPAA, then we had a policy where we had to turn the camera off just because of the medical information. And then we would have to turn the camera on. So again, so I mean, I like the idea of having it on, but do you foresee any problems with like certain information being recorded or?
Well, because they're on CGIS compliant servers,
Yeah,
that can
yeah,
all be redacted later. I know that that would create more work, obviously.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but in a medical setting, you make a good point that that would more than likely need to be either turned off or redacted immediately
yeah,
because it is protected.
yeah, yeah. What other technology, Ben, do you think, I mean, besides just everything being recorded, I mean, what do you foresee coming just in your experience working with agencies, as far as technology goes in the future for law enforcement? I know some agencies have crazy shit. I mean, they have like I'm serious, straight out of a. I think I got know guys that work out in LAPD, and they got like flashlights that can disorient you. That by put a strobe on or something. They got foam that to immobilize people. It's insane in a good way.
Yeah, there's there's better armor and bulletproofing technology coming out that's lighter. The cars will be protected better. Like, yeah, all that stuff is becoming stronger and lighter.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. What do you think? The public, I always had this view about the public, and I love the public, but they get what they see off law enforcement or what they get what their knowledge is on law enforcement, what they see in the movies and television. They don't know about the actual work, the paperwork that goes behind all that. I mean, all this stuff, this documentation. Is that what does the public, in your opinion, what does the public don't know about law enforcement operations?
Well, they have no idea what happens behind the scenes, like you said. Like the amount of people that are, also working in that building, helping coordinate everything from dispatch to records to supervision, like a patrol sergeant that works the overnight shift that has to sign off on every report before he leaves or she at 8 a.m. And he's been there since 10 p.m. the night before.
Absolutely.
And let's say there's, yeah, 75 reports. They've got to go through all of them before they leave. That takes some time. And
Yeah.
if an officer missed something or there was a mistake, they've got to come back and fix it. Like they think that, cops drive around in cars all day and then sign off and go home.
Yeah.
Like,
Kick in doors and. kicking indoors, making arrests. But you're right. I mean, I remember those days, and again, getting back to the documentation, being a supervisor for a while. I mean, I would have to make sure all the reports, read through all the reports, because ultimately those reports are going to end up, they're going to end up at the DA's office, and ultimately they could end up in the hands of a jury. So you have to make sure that everything's, your I's are dotted and T's are crossed and all that stuff, with case submissions and stuff like that, because it's so critical. And that's why I love, Ditto transcripts, because it takes some of that burden off, where now I don't have to, I could just rely on you guys, and you're going to give me a transcription that's accurate and what I need to for my case. But you're right. That's what people don't see. They don't see all the man hours, like this, getting back to this horrible incident in Boulder. Can you imagine the documentation, brother, behind that?
Oh yeah, those investigators, both with Boulder County Sheriff's Office, Boulder County PD, and the FBI, they're going to have to do so much paperwork for one guy
Yeah, one guy.
that, yeah, they'll probably spend, I would imagine at least a month in man
I was going
hours.
to say weeks. And like you said,
Simply,
the multi agencies involved.
yeah, and then they have to cooperate and share everything. So that's more time on the phone, email, texting. Hey, I have this done. Where do you want it sent? Who else do I need to copy? And that's happening for all three of them, back and forth. And then, I don't know, 8 or 10 people on each side need to be informed.
Hmm.
Then the district attorney and the defense attorney. So there are so many people involved, so many requests, so many interviews, and they're at different hospitals. I read some are in a hospital in Denver and some are at a hospital in Boulder. Like driving between all those places,
Yeah.
there's traffic, there's accidents, there's weather. Like there's so much more that happens.
Yeah. And this is where Ditto transcripts can come into play. Hey, do you guys work with the
Yeah.
feds? Do you work with the feds?
We have one federal entity right now, the National Park Service investigative unit. So every major felony that happens on national park land,
Hmm. Wow.
they conduct interviews and we transcribe them.
It's amazing. So what's next for the company, brother? I mean, I mean, you don't have to tell me, but just or give me an idea. What's next for Ditto? I mean, how are you going to keep the ball rolling and growing? Obviously, more customers.
Yeah, a larger footprint. Like we have a number of clients in the West because we're in Denver, and not as many on the East Coast and say Ohio East. So that's where we'd like to go next, and including Florida.
Well, you got me, brother. I think it's a
Yeah.
great idea. I'm connected down here. I'll put your name out.
Well, as you know, the population is booming. So that, unfortunately, for the public, is bad in terms of crime, but for us, in terms of law enforcement transcription, is good.
Well, it's good for everybody, because I think not only are you making a little money and your company is making a little money, but when you get accurate transcription and good, documentation, that not only helps you and your company, it helps the agency in terms of liability. It ultimately helps the community, because now it's a professional case. Where there, not that it wasn't before, but it just makes it better for the agency. It makes it more efficient. You know what I mean? As far as cutting down on maybe OT, overtime, and making it more streamlined. So I got, this company over here, Ditto, that's helping me to focus on other stuff, because I don't have to focus on that stuff. So ultimately, everybody wins. You know what I mean?
Yes.
All the stakeholders win, in my opinion.
So the 12 months prior to us being awarded the Arkansas State Police contract, they did a pilot program with the competing transcription service and realized that their overtime went down and turnover went down with their crimes against children division. That's where they did the pilot program, and they had at the time 110 or 115 investigators in that unit. And over that 12-month period, they noticed what I said before. Turnover went down, overtime went down, the stress levels were lower than they had been before because they weren't cranking out reports at 8, 10 o'clock at night before their next day when they were going to have to go out and make, 20 more visits and do 20 more reports the next night when they got home.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything, and then, circling back around what we talked to about burnout and stress, when you get officers that now the turnover rate is mitigated now, that tells me as somebody who works in behavioral health that their mental health, while might not be perfect, but it's getting a little better because it's one less thing they have to worry about now. So overall, the health and wellness of the officer, might be getting better because they don't have to worry about all this stuff. Like you said, Ben, up at night at 10 o'clock at night, I've been there working on reports, pulling 16, 18-hour days. Maybe that's cut in half, or maybe it's, minimized to some degree where you don't have to worry about all this paperwork and submissions and all this stuff because you guys can pick up the load. That's what you're there for.
Yeah, and the mental fatigue that takes on people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because it takes more brain power than you think to summarize a 2-hour interview with a murder suspect. Or add in transcription, you're going to spend even more time.
Well, absolutely. I mean, imagine going on a call, a critical incident, and you're up here as far as your anxiety or stress or whatever, and then you got to go back to the PD or agency, whatever, sheriff's department, and then you got to decompress, and then you got to hammer out of reports. Maybe you get able to take a break at some point, but to farm this out to some degree, part of it to an agency like yours is huge, and it does tie back into mental health and wellness and officer, wellness or fire department wellness. Do you ever work with like fire departments, brother? Or is it strictly law enforcement?
Um, it's been law enforcement. We had one fire investigator a long time ago.
Hmm.
I don't know what happened. I think they started doing their own in-house again
Yeah,
because they didn't want to pay. Uh, and I get it because they were a smaller entity south of Denver
yeah.
and didn't have the budget for it. So that investigator went back to doing his own.
Well, I love your business, brother. Seriously, I do. I think it's huge. I wish it was around when I was a young cop. Is there any other final words you want to tell the listeners before we wrap up, my friend?
Oh, not that I can think of right now. No.
Well, I appreciate you being on, Ben. Where can people reach you? I know you're on Twitter, LinkedIn, Meta, all those things. Is it just good to put your website on the show notes?
Yeah, dittotranscripts.com is fine.
Yeah. And I know the DC in Longmont. We grew up together in law enforcement, so he's a good guy. You
Yeah.
probably know him too.
Yes.
Ben Walker, thank you so much for being on the show, brother. And yes, any way I can help get the word out here down in Florida, I'm game, brother. It's a good business. I
Thank you.
love it. And I like it how it ties into, just productivity and more help for the officers and obviously behavioral health and mental health for the first responders. I appreciate you being on, brother. Anything we can do, let me know, my friend.
Thank you, Patrick.
All right, brother. Bye bye.